Are we live? Are we live? Live on the internet. Hello, Rick. How's it going? You're going to have to tell me if we're live. I don't know. You're going to have to tell me in the comments if we're live. It is the question I ask every week. So good evening to those who are watching now and those who may be watching in the future. This is the 5G4D weekly live stream here from the heart of Berlin in Prenzlauer Berg. Thank you, Rick. We are live, and so it's been an awful week. Nothing particular has happened. It's just Berlin winter is terrible, and I'm really done with it. And I know what people like. You see, I know what people like. People like hot weather chat. People like just sitting down and listening to people talk about the weather, and the weather in Berlin is terrible. And I am just the problem is right. I'm going to Lariacon at the beginning of March, and it just hangs. This anticipation of Lariacon is just hanging, and it makes the German winter worse. Also, I'm going to the theatre tomorrow, and for two reasons, it's a bit of a nightmare. Firstly, I'm going to see a play by Arthur Schnitzler, and I don't like Arthur Schnitzler. I've seen two plays by Arthur Schnitzler. I didn't like either of them. And secondly, there is this trend in German theatre where you don't have intervals. So this play, I think, is 3.5 hours long or something like that, with no interval. So I've just got to sit there. And it's in German as well. So I've just got to sit there listening to people... an Arthur Schnitzler character talking about how good he is at sex, because that's all Arthur Schnitzler plays are. Oh, I've seen three, actually, because Eyes Wide Shut is based on an Arthur Schnitzler novel, which I didn't like either. So it's going to be a guy talking about how great at sex he is and how all the women love him, and then in German, and I've just got to sit there and deal with it. And anyway, so Arthur Schnitzler play tomorrow. So welcome. So tonight, what we're going to do is we are going to answer your questions. Now, I put a call out for questions, and I only got one question on the Discord. So if you're watching this and you have any questions on any topic, it can be about anything, and I will attempt to answer anything. It needn't just be about games. It can be about anything. Please ask the questions. I'm looking for questions. I enjoy answering your questions. But I've got a really good question from the Discord that I'm going to bring up. I'm going to play some songs, and then I'm going to tier list Stefan Feld games I've played. And it was really interesting. I was compiling this today, and I realized I haven't played that many Stefan Feld. So also I'm looking for some recommendations for Stefan Feld games, if you've got any. So I'm going to start off. I've decided tonight, because I'm in that mood, because it's miserable, and it's February, and it's German winter. Hang on, my cable's being a dickhead. I'm just going to play Elliott Smith songs tonight. I'm going to make this a whole Elliott Smith evening. Because, it needs that kind of miserableness. Always start with a D. Don't know why. Okay, so this is a song called Angelus by Elliott Smith. And it's all Elliott Smith all the time tonight. And I'm gonna mess it up, I'm sure. Sorry, I didn't put the capo on. I've messed up already. This is a farce, isn't it? I need a capo on the 5th fret. I was thinking, this doesn't sound right. And I need a capo on the 5th fret. So I've got the capo on now. We can start again. Just make sure the capo's... Yeah, that's fine. Someone's always coming around here, trailing some new kill. Says I seen your picture on a $100 bill. The game of chance to you is one with real skill. So glad to meet you, Angela. Picking up the ticket shows there's money to be made. Go on and lose, gamble, that's the history of the trade. If you add up all the cards left to play, the zero, sign up evil Angela. But don't start me trying now. Cause I'm all over it, Angela. I can make you satisfied in everything you do. All your secret wishes could right now be coming true. Be forever with my poison arms around you. No one's gonna fool around with us. No one's gonna fool around with us. So glad to meet you, Angela. That's a good tune. It's a good tune. I'm not sure how well I serve it, but it is a very good tune. Elliott Smith. And if you've... So tonight is an Elliott Smith only night. So if you've got any Elliott Smith tunes that you want me to play, put them in the chat and I will do them. Speaking of traveling, okay. So speaking of traveling, how'd you get into bicycle camping? Favorite trip, ever bother taking any games along? This is a great question from Sean M. And I just want to say, if you're watching this and you have any questions, pop them in the chat and I will answer them. So I'm going to tell this in its full form because I think it's interesting. I remember as a kid, I watched a film of Huckleberry Finn. And there was a scene with Jim and Huck, and they were going down the Mississippi. And it triggered this thing in me that I thought, wow, they're going on a multi-day journey just away, and their whole world is on that raft. And I just thought it was so romantic. And then when I was living in Vienna, in the summer, I would do kids' camps. I would teach kids English in the summer. And there was a guy who was the camp leader, and he was this Australian guy with dreadlocks and all of this. And he was really into his outdoor stuff. He was a BMXer, and he was sort of into racing bikes, but he was also into cycle touring. And so one day he said, so we were doing this thing. We were doing this camp at the Neusiedler See, which is the biggest lake in Austria. And you can cycle around the Neusiedler See. It's not hugely long, but I think it's about... Oh, God, how long is it? It's about 100K, something like that, 100, 120K. And it's great. You cycle around the lake and you go into Hungary and you come back out of Hungary and into Austria. And so I sort of scrabbled some panniers together and I borrowed a bike and I bought a tent and we did this thing, and we didn't go very far every day, and one day it was raining, so we just stayed in the tent all day next to the lake, and it was just brilliant. It really evoked that feeling that I'd had as a kid. And here I was on a bicycle, and my whole world was on a bike. My food was in my panniers, my shelter was in my panniers, and it was just so exciting. And I realized, because I'm not a very rich person, I realized that it's just a wonderful holiday. And sort of I try every year to do a cycle tour. And so I've done it for the last decade. Every year, a minimum one, but multiple cycle tours sometimes. And my favorite trips, it's difficult. I've done a couple that are really great. So I cycled from the source of the Danube to Vienna, which is about 1,000 k, I think, something like that. And it is just wonderful. Especially the second part is the really famous part. It's the very busy part from Bavaria to Vienna. It's just the most beautiful countryside. It is absolutely prepossessing. It is, and it's not difficult because you're cycling next to a river, right? And what is amazing is you imagine the Danube being this massive river, but actually, when you're at the source, it's literally that wide. It's a little brook. It's brilliant, and it was a really nice trip. I've cycled a few times, Berlin to Copenhagen, or the other way around, Copenhagen to Berlin. Brilliant trip. It's really great. And a couple of years ago, a friend in Vienna was getting married and he invited me to his wedding. So I thought, why don't I just cycle? And so I just got Komoot, the app, out, and I put the route in, and it took me across. And basically, I had no idea whether there were cycle paths or anything. I was a little bit nervous going through the Czech Republic. I wondered what the infrastructure was like. And basically, you cycle to Dresden and then south, and you go through the Czech Republic and then into Austria. And the first 2 days, cycling along the Elbe, it was wonderful. I was doing about 120, 150k per day, really eating up the kilometers. It was relatively easy because you're going with the river, so it's slightly downhill. An absolutely wonderful trip. The weather was glorious. And then you hit Dresden, and it just does that. You go through an area of Germany called the Sächsische Schweiz. It's called the Saxony, Switzerland, because it's mountainous. And then you hit the Czech Republic, and it's just up and down and up and down. And I was cycling, and I guess most of the time I was between sort of 50 and 100k from Prague, right? Cycling through. But I was cycling through the countryside, and it was great. Down B roads, I was never in trouble. And what was really bad is no one spoke English. And I got to a hotel once. So I camped usually, but I couldn't find a campsite. So I'm going to stay in a hotel. It didn't end up costing very much. And I walked into the hotel, and I literally had to do sign language. Sleep here, lovely. And there was one guy in the kitchen who could speak a smattering of German. And so I managed to communicate what I wanted to eat and all of that. And that was a really good trip. It was because it wasn't along cycle paths. It wasn't like a prescriptive sort of cycle route that a lot of people have done. It was a bit of an adventure, and it was great. And then I got into Austria, and I know Austria, so that was fine. That was great. And do I bother taking games along? Always. I'll always take a couple of little card games, and I never play them. But I just think if I'm at the campsite, someone wants to play something, I'll take a game with me, and I always do. And I never play them. But if you ever thought about cycle touring, I mean, I'm in Germany. The German-speaking countries are just so great for it. They're really good at marking out their routes. But if you ever think about it, it needn't be expensive. You needn't spend that much money on a bike. You needn't spend that much money on equipment. It's something you can add to your collection as years go on. And you can start with doing a couple of days. And I usually stay at campsites because in Germany, it is illegal to camp wild, and I just can't be bothered with the hassle, and campsites are cheap. And it's wonderful. And start with a couple of days, and then maybe do 3 or 4 and do a week. I usually at the beginning, when the weather heats up, the beginning of sort of middle of spring, when it starts to get hot, I usually cycle from the source of the Spree, which is the river that goes through Berlin, to Berlin. And it's about a 400k route. It's brilliant. It is, and it's easy, and I do it in about 3 days. I do about 100k, 3.5, 4 days. I try to do 120k a day or something, and it's brilliant. I highly recommend cycle touring. It is the best form of holiday. My dream, and I probably will never achieve it just because of money and time, is to cycle across Canada, to cycle from the west to the east. I would love to do it. If anyone wants to sponsor me to do that, get on it. So if anyone, as I said, if you're watching this and you have any questions on anything, pop them in the chat. I will answer them. So I got a question from the Discord. So this is an interesting one. So is there something about board games or the people who play them, which incite existential turmoil. Oh, I'll get this up actually. Why do some board gamers dwell on how the hobby is perceived in the world and its purpose? Do other hobbies have this weightiness? Are there knitting circles who sit around wondering who they are and what their chosen activity really means? Or is this just the 5 games for Doomsday community? So this is fascinating, right? Because there is this sort of wringing of hands about how board gaming is perceived and how it's not taken seriously as an art form. And I am like that as much as anybody, moaning about you don't take our art form seriously and you think it's just for kids and all of this. And so I think so. The first part of the question is, why do some board gamers dwell on how the hobby is perceived in the world and its purpose? So it's a couple of things. Firstly, when you're really into something, you really want other people to understand it. It's human beings are natural evangelists, I think. It's like when you get in, I remember as a kid, I really got into Dead Kennedys, and I just wanted everybody to understand how brilliant this thing was, right? And it was the same with me with games. I really wanted people to understand how brilliant games were. And so part of this how it's perceived in the world is because once you get really into games, you realize how they can deliver an experience to you that is on par with novels, with music, with cinema, with the visual arts. How you can come out of a game and have had some sort of transformative experience. I remember, and I talk about this a lot, it was a game of Concordia. And when we'd finished, we all just stood up and just looked at the board in silence in this sort of communal appreciation of just this absolutely transformative experience we've had. And I think once you've had an experience with that, like that in games, I think you are naturally predisposed to then not only to want people to experience it too, but expect that this thing is brilliant, to get that level of respect, the respect it deserves. And so today, someone tweeted, Board Game Barbecue tweeted, why are you into games? It was something, what's so special about games? And people were talking about stuff that is completely legitimate, community, brain exercise, all of this sort of stuff. And I tweeted, and it might sound a bit pretentious, but nevertheless, I think it's true. I tweeted that part of the reason games really, really inspire me is that all of us here, and I assume people watching this are really into games, right? All of us here are witnessing the birth. What did I write? We are witnessing the birth of a nascent art form in its first blooming. And I think that's really true. I think board games, and it's funny because board games have been around longer, as long as most forms of art, I would assume. I think the visual arts, painting, is probably older than games, but games have been around for thousands of years, right? And yet, as an art form, they're nascent. As a real development, as both mechanically and thematically, they are in their first blooming. It does feel like I constantly talk about this. With the podcast, that I think these people I'm interviewing are the Lawrence Stern, are the Cervantes of the board game art, right? They are the first exponents. And the reason I always use novels is because novels are interesting. Novels are interesting because they're a relatively new art form. 500 years old. I mean, that sounds very old, but nevertheless, relatively new if you compare them to poetry, if you compare them to music, if you compare them to painting. Relatively new. And novels were considered bullshit when they first come out. They were considered low art. And you would be stretching credibility to assert that novels were low art today. Games have that kind of similar. Games have a pretty similar reputation amongst those who aren't really into them, right? That they're for kids, and I think games don't help themselves in their presentation, especially as it's commercially driven art form. You tend to fall into things. There's lots of stuff with cats, and so, but it does feel like a nascent art form is blooming. And we are witnessing it. It starts with Sid Sackson, but I think Sid Sackson is I agree. I did say board games have existed for thousands of years, but being thought of as an art form, I think is if you say 20 years, I think that's a bit long. But Sid Sackson, I think, was a revolutionary. And people didn't pick up the Sid Sackson baton really until later. And then you have the 70s wave of games, with Gygax and Arneson, but also with Avalon Hill. And then I think the first kind of real artist who stands astride, I think the pioneer is Knizia. And then from there, but the thing is, even then, even when Catan comes over to the West and to the Anglophone world, and Eurogames become this great cultural phenomenon, they're still not thought of as art. And it's only really, I think, in the last decade that people are starting to talk about it in this way. I would give an example. Space Biff, I would give an example. And lots of other people who are sort of dealing with it in this way. So CD Hunter is here, and he is getting ratty with me in the chat. What does he say? Totally disagree. Sure, Go or chess are still art forms. No, maybe they don't have auteurs, but auteurs don't make things up. You're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. But I think you will concede with me that Go and chess are outliers in the way that they were addressed within the world. Analog games, Go and chess were their own islands. And there wasn't a consensus in talking about games as an art form. There was people who were talking about chess, and chess specifically as a competitive thing, right? Same with Go. Go is different. If you look at Go, it is represented in Chinese art from 1,000 years ago. So it certainly is. But when you're talking about a critical mass of people addressing this art form as an art form, I think it's a very recent development. You can tell me I'm wrong, but this is the way I see it. And are there knitting circles that sit around wondering who they are and what their chosen activity really means? Or is this just the 5G4D community? So I don't really know about lots of other hobbies, but I watch Karen Puzzles because she does videos from puzzle competitions, and I find it absolutely fascinating. And I find these other sort of very niche pursuits. Look at that, people. That is an affirmation. I got agreed by CD Hunter. So I'm not sure the puzzle community looks on puzzles as an art form, but they certainly are very, very into the way puzzles are delivered to them, the way puzzles are cut, the art that is on them, the thickness of the pieces, the way the box is shaped, the rarity of certain designs, historical trends within puzzles. They're really into it. It evokes that sense that I think games have too. When we talk about the 5G4D community, and here I'm going to pimp the Discord. If people here aren't on the Discord, please go to 5G4D.com, click on the pin post and join the Discord. I don't want to blow my own trumpet, and I don't know why this is, but I always wanted to develop a community around the podcast and didn't for years. And I started the Discord a long time ago, and it was people like CZ Hunter and people like Cthulhu Dreams who stayed there and kept this Discord alive when I completely abandoned it, when I thought it was a completely dead city. And then me and my podcast partner, Stevie J. Cyrek, decided that we would make a concerted effort at the beginning of last year, and it has exploded relatively. Now, I'm sure there are Discords with hundreds of thousands of members, but for me, it's exploded. And I don't know how this has happened, but we've managed to form a community over there that is incredibly thoughtful in the way that they talk about games. And what is also wonderful is that it is a community that disagrees with each other vociferously and yet very agreeably. And I think that's wonderful. I think the Discord is great. And I look at other people's Discords, and I researched other people's Discords when I was starting mine to get a frame of reference, right? And every Discord, whether it's got 5 members or whether it's got 100,000, has a code of conduct. And I am very suspicious of codes of conduct. I think that, for instance, and they have moderators. I don't think the Discord, the 5G for Discord, is big enough for me to nominate moderators yet. But also, I fear moderators. I see people moderating Board Game Geek, for instance, who I think are slightly power hungry, and they are very keen to swing the ban hammer. The reason I don't have a code of conduct within my Discord, and of course I think if you had 100,000, maybe you'd need it, but is because if someone is out of order, and it's very likely to be me, I feel like the community will say to them, come on, man, don't be a bellend. And no one's really been a bellend thus far. And so to finally end the answer to that question with the 5G for the community, I think it is absolutely fabulous. I think it is, and it's really affirming to me. It tells me that hopefully I'm doing something correct. So, and I'm going to repeat this again. I would love you to put some questions in the chat. I love answering your questions. So if you've got anything, it can be on any subject, no matter how controversial or bland, I will attempt to answer it. So Dave Moser asks, speaking of language challenges, I'm considering LyriaCon for 2025. I don't know why you're considering it. And I just saw 2025 then and just had a real surreal moment because I was just like, is it 2020 bloody 4 already? God, I'm living in the future and it's a dystopia. How difficult is it to navigate that part of Portugal for a non-Portuguese speaker? Native English speakers speak the lingua franca. Interesting. I found out recently that the reason we say lingua franca is because the first lingua franca was lingua franca. It was a trading language around sort of Venice and the Barbary Coast and all that sort of stuff. Fascinating. Anyway, it's really easy. Most people speak English, so you really don't have an issue. Most people speak English well. And I have been in situations where I've been into a cafe in a village in the middle of nowhere and people don't speak English. And that doesn't matter. You just point at stuff and people will give it you. If you go into a hotel, so LyriaCon, for instance, everybody speaks fluent English. Not just fluent English, brilliant English. It is such an indictment of the Anglophone world. We're so terrible at languages. I mean, but I speak German and people are like, whereas, most taxi drivers in Berlin are trilingual. They speak English, German, and often the taxi drivers are immigrants, so they speak a third language, which is their mother tongue. And it is an indictment of the Anglophone world. And the reason we don't speak more languages in the Anglophone world is because we speak the lingua franca. So it's swings and roundabouts. Yeah, it's easy. And Dave, you have to come to LyriaCon in 2025. It's the best con in the world. So Matthew W. Coates, very formal. He's known as Serrated Blade over on the Discord. I think the Discord is fascinating and definitely takes discussion of the hobby to a depth I haven't experienced anywhere else. And I was about to say thank you for that, Matthew, but I think that I shouldn't say thank you. I think the people on Discord are the ones who deserve the compliment because they're the ones that make it happen, and it's absolutely fascinating. So I'm going to play another song. It's an Elliott Smith's Night All Night. If you've got any other questions during this song, pop them in the chat. I would love to answer them. And then we'll get to ranking Stefan Feld. And it's a little disappointing. I haven't played that many Stefan Feld games. So bear with me a second. I'm just going to get my guitar in that. All right. And this one starts on D minor, which is the saddest of all chords in my view. This is his famous one, so you might have heard this one. And also, if you've got any Elliott Smith songs you want me to play, tell me. I'll fake you through the day with some help. When Johnny Walker Red send the poison rain down the drain to put bad thoughts in my head. 2 tickets torn in half and a lot of nothing to do. Do you miss me? Miss misery like you say you do. A man in the park read the lines in my head, told me I'm strong, hardly ever wrong. I said, man, you mean you had plans for both of us that involved a trip out of town to a place I've seen in a magazine that you left lying around. Don't have you with me, but I keep a good attitude. Do you miss me? Miss misery like you say you do. I know you'd rather see me gone than to see me the way that I am, but I am in the life anyway. Next door TV's flashing blue, frames on the wall. It's a comedy with errors, you see. It's about taking a fall to vanish into oblivion. It's easy to do, but I try to be. But you know me, I'll come back when you want me to. Do you miss me? Miss misery like you say you do. The auto scroll on the website was not quick enough, so I had to auto scroll it myself using hands. That's the automatic scroll of the hand. There we go. Excellent. So CD Hunter is giving me a compliment, and why not take the compliment? It's the age in which we live. It's because of you, though. It's because 5G4D was so good. He uses was there. It's rather disconcerting, but thank you. Thank you, CD Hunter. I mostly lurk on the Discord, but the conversation is always fascinating. It is. It is always fascinating. CD Hunter asks, do you do musical theatre? I have done musical theatre quite both as an amateur and slightly as a professional. It scares me to death, to be honest. But I love singing. I am not a musical theatre fan, though it wouldn't bother me doing it. I would happily do it because being in musicals is loads of fun. But I'm not a musical theatre fan. I think I discussed this before. I like a few musicals. They are good. There are some great musicals. And I tend to veer towards the dark ones. I think these ones that are very glitzy and very bright and very positive are just not for me. That's not the art I gravitate towards. I haven't seen Hamilton. If you've seen it and you think it's great, let me know. But no, I don't. I haven't for ages. Although actually, the play I was last in autumn was a play about David Bowie, and we sang a number of songs, but my solo was of a famous German drag artist. And, I guess that's musical theatre, I suppose. It was great. Anyway, so Justin says join late but singing along. Well, Justin, if you've got any requests, because it's Elliott Smith all night tonight. If you've got any requests for Elliott Smith songs, just ask me and I'll probably play them. I know most Elliott Smith songs. So Ben Davies says, I find this nascent art form argument very interesting. Are you saying that it would be hard to define early board games, excluding chess and go, as art, or that modern designers are trying to make them more than just mechanics? Okay, so it's an interesting thing. So as with most things, I'm talking from a perspective of no expertise whatsoever. But my view on games, so that you say designers are trying to make them more than mechanics. I think the designers who try to make games more than mechanics fundamentally fail, because games are a mechanical art form. So, and that's, it sounds very woolly, but I think nevertheless it's true, because and this is why reading a rule book is a really bad way to learn a game. The written word does not convey the feelings that games give you and the way to manipulate these mechanisms very well. I think games are similar, and this is why it's difficult, because I'm using words, and words are the way we communicate, and they're not perfect for this. But I think games are similar to music in the way they affect the person interfacing with them, right? So the human vocabulary, whatever language you speak, is not great for conveying what music does to you, the effect music has on you. And this is very similar to games. So you can use words like flow state, you can use words like immersion, but do they really put the finger on what it is that games do? And I don't think they do particularly. And we need to do this. I think we need to write, and we need to discuss, and we need to sort of debate what games are. But it's very difficult because they have this. I think there is something intrinsically human in structured play. I mean, it's the Huizinga. I'm ruining his. I'm ruining his name, but that idea, the Homo ludens idea, that we are human because we have structured play. It is different from animal play. It's different from the way dogs play. We have rules and we abide by them, and the challenge and the pleasure dwells within these rules. Games, there are narrative experiences in games, but I assert that the greatest narrative experiences don't come from games trying to ape other art forms, like big blocks of flavor text trying to ape novels. They come from the mechanical interaction. And there is a wonderful thing that games do, is that all you need to do with a game, is to hint at something. Uwe Rosenberg does this brilliantly. People say, oh, themeless Euros. I think Uwe Rosenberg does incredibly thematically rich Euro games. And what he does is he gets a mechanism to hint at what it is, and your brain naturally fills it in glorious 3D. And that's what, for me, what theme is in games, that you feel like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. I'm not a big war gamer, but it seems to me, I've played quite a few Ameritrash games, and the idea that thematic means rolling dice a lot doesn't make sense to me. That you roll dice to see which part of the tank you hit, and then you roll dice to see what damage it does, and you roll dice to see if there are ricochets, and rolling dice doesn't feel like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing necessarily. And so yeah, I think designers shouldn't try to make games that are more than just mechanics, because I think mechanics is it. I think games, this is why Knizia is so brilliant, because his mechanics are so brilliant, and that's why games are great. And there are certain games that I think fail, and I think the greatest the greatest example of that I can think of is Oath. I think Oath is all trying to transcend mechanics and forgetting that mechanics are what makes games great, and what fire that response that makes us think that they're art, right? CD Hunter says, in the issue, the criticism culture now treats it as an art form. Well, by its very nature, I think that's what it is, right? Are things intrinsically art forms? Or is it our reaction to them that makes them art forms? I would suggest it's probably the latter. Not really that games pre-50 were not art. Part of it is that critique has widened what we consider art. That's absolutely true. Yes, you're absolutely right. I agree with you. Critique has widened what we consider art. But I contradict myself, because I'm not an academic. But also, I have a very broad definition of art, but I think art is something that speaks to us and tells us about what we are as animals, whatever that means. And it's suitably vague that I can fit it into any box I wish, and that's my prerogative. But I think that the way games affect us makes them art. They are, but I mean, there needs to be an artificial aspect, right? If you get frustrated playing a game, you get frustrated waiting for the light to change. But games are artificial constructs that are specifically there to evoke feelings in us. I think that is important too. That's a fundamental thing. Anyway, excellent. So, what's the time? It is 2:45. I'll play one more song, because now I start at 9. I can't play songs past 10 because the Germans will report me to the police. So I'll play one more song. If you've got any questions, please put them in the chat. And which one am I going to play? Okay, I'll play that one. This is a good tune. This is another Elliott Smith, all Elliott Smith all the time. I'm just going to make sure my guitar is in tune. Okay, excellent. I'm having problems with my headphones, so I can't really hear things tonight. I need to get them fixed tomorrow. Anyway, okay. So, throwing candy out to the crowd. Hang on. I've got to hit the auto scroll. Throwing candy out to the crowd, dragging down the lane. The helpless little thing with the dirtiest mouth, who's always got something to say. You're sitting around at home now, waiting for your brother to call. I saw him down in the alley, haven't had enough of it all. Said you can do what you want to, whenever you want to. Yeah, you can do what you want to, there's no one to stop you. All spit and spite you, up all night, down every day. getting into the back of a car for candy from some stranger, watching the parade with the pinpoint eyes full of smoldering anger. You can do what you want to whenever you want to. Yeah, you can do what you want to, there's no one to stop you. Yeah, you can do what you want to whenever you want to. Do what you want to whenever you want to. Do what you want to whenever you want to. Though it doesn't mean a thing, big nothing. It's a good tune. It's a good tune. I love the way it twists at the end. It sounds like it might be a positive song, but it's actually a very negative one because Elliott Smith wasn't the happiest lad in the world. And my guitar just fell over. Oh, life's great. Excellent. So, Justin Nichols says, I can see rolling dice in a war game kind of matching generals running stats and numbers of infantry to measure their chances of victory. Fond farewell. Fond farewell, waltz number 2 or Rose Parade. Yes, that's right. You might have a point there. But agree, war games are a stretch. From the couple I've played, it feels like generals around a map moving pawns around, which is a bit thematic. Yeah. And the thing is, talking about war games is not my... I shouldn't be talking about war games. I don't know enough about it. Okay, so let's rank. Let's have a bit of a public rank. I'm going to have a rank in front of you all right now. Stefan Feld games. I've got to share my screen. Here we go. I've got a lot of tabs here. Share. There we go. Can people see that? Yeah. So, I love these tier lists. People don't like them, but I think they're great. Anyway, so this is Stefan Feld games I played, and look at how few there are. It's not depressing. I thought I played loads more Stefan Feld games, but I haven't. So I'm going to rank them. I'm going to talk about them, and you can see if you agree with me. All right, so we start with Amerigo. I think this is great, and I think this is a very underrated game that I have had so much fun playing. And it's a real Feld game, but that dice tower really does something. Components mean something. Talking about games as art, every element of games, the way they facilitate, I think they're mechanical art forms, and this dice tower is a mechanical thing. And I love it. It's not a masterpiece. When I think of Amerigo, I think of the great games that I love that are absolute masterpieces. I don't put Amerigo there. It's a B or it's an A. You know, I like Amerigo. I'm going to put Amerigo at an A. Tier list or S tier. That's bloody right, Rick. I got a rather snotty comment, someone telling me not to do tier lists, but I like them. I like tier lists. I like having a rank in public. It's not original, but there we are. Okay, so Bonfire. I played this once. I thought this was bog standard Stefan Feld. Sometimes, so the Hateful Eight is like this. The Hateful Eight feels like someone who's really into Tarantino making a Tarantino movie. And if he really is only going to make 10 movies, it's such a tragedy that one of them's the Hateful Eight. And I think Bonfire feels like that. Like, I think it's not a bad game. I had fun. It functions. But it's nothing more than a B tier game. Bruges. Now, I haven't played any of the new Queen game versions, and I'd be interested to know what people think about that. Put your comments down. Put your comments down in the chat now if you have any views on the Queen games thing. In every element as well, whether you think the games are great or whether you think that their business practices are outrageous, whatever you think, put it down in the chat. I'd be interested to know. But Bruges, I think, is great. I think it's really good. Do I think it's an S tier game? I'm afraid I don't, but I think it's better than Amerigo. I would need to play it more, maybe, but I think Bruges is great, and I bought it, and then I sold it like a month before the prices went through the roof, so I missed out there. Carpe Diem is good, but it's not great. And the production issues don't really bother me. It doesn't make the game completely non-functional. I think they've kind of fixed it now. It's one of those Stefan Feld games. It's a lighter Feld game, which I think some of his light games are absolutely fantastic. This is fine. It's better than Bonfire, but it's not a classic Feld. So this is Castles of Burgundy, the card game. And it's very rare that a card game or dice game implementation of something will be as good as the original. It's just absolutely. If you've got a card game or a dice game being made of something, usually it's because it's brilliant. And the card game is, it's not A tier. I'd put it here. It's fine. I enjoyed it, but it's not the greatest thing in the world. So what are we saying? CD Hunter says, one thing about dice and modifiers and lots of tables is that they can be thematic, where they give the player a sense of the incentives and factors that go into the decision-making process of the player. Yeah, I totally agree. I find the concept of a CRT a bit soul-destroying, though. He said, I wish they just would have released Bruges. It's such a pretty game. Yeah, and I think the Feld City series falls into that rather disappointing thing that games are becoming hugely expensive now. And they're becoming status symbols. And I think that is a nature of art, right? Art becomes a status symbol. That's why I remember when I was a teenager, Penguin, the publisher, introduced £1 classics. So you could buy Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights, Hard Times for £1. A paperback version of these books. And, it fomented my notion of the English canon. I love Alea Games because they have these brilliant Euro games that are 30, 40 quid. And they're probably not going to continue to do that because of the way games are at the moment. La Isla. I love La Isla. La Isla is a vastly underrated game. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I don't think it's S tier, but I think it's very high A tier. I love this. If people don't know Stefan Feld, I pull out La Isla. The way the cards, the way he introduces programming and everything into it is just brilliant. I absolutely adore it. If you haven't tried this, try it. It's been implemented in the City series, and I can't remember which one it is. Is it Amsterdam? I don't know, but yeah, La Isla is brilliant. I am a La Isla stan. So Revolution 1828. I'm going to put it here, partly because I barely remember, and this is Vienna. Thank you. Revolution 1828 is a game that barely caused a ripple. And I played this in prototype form. Matthias Nudge, who is the owner of Frosted Games and also one of the guys in Deep Print Games, one of the owners of Deep Print Games, when he was playing Reichholt, he invited me over to his place to play Reichholt before it was published. It was very exciting, new Uwe Rosenberg game. It's not one of his best. And we played that, and he said, I've got this prototype from Stefan Feld. Do you want to play it? And he said, I'm thinking about putting this Revolution theme on it. And I thought it was excellent. The reason I'm putting it in C tier is because I just don't remember anything about it. But I thought it was really good. And it didn't do anything. I mean, I didn't even realize it had come out. So I'd recommend if you I mean, it's probably, let's have a look. Let's have a look on BGG, shall we? How much is this game? Revolution of, what is it called again? 18 something or other? 1828. Came out 2019. I thought it was a nice little 2-player game. And you could get it for, like, in America for $14.99. Secondhand for $10. I can get it in Germany for 12, the German edition for €12. you could do a lot worse than having a punt on Revolution of 1828. So next one, Trajan, no question. This is not my favorite Feld, but it is an S tier game. It is absolutely fantastic. I thought this was so heavy when I first played it, and now it's just it's medium, even medium light, but it is just so brilliant. It's a brilliant piece of engineering. This is a game designer at his very best, really at the top of his game. I love it. Dave Moses says, vis-a-vis the ratification of games, I can envision a version of modern art with designers and board games in place of painters and canvases. Yes. I think that would be. I tend to not like the navel gazing stuff, but it absolutely works. I think what's so wonderful about modern art, and I asked Knizia this, and he sort of tacitly agreed with it, although I don't think he'd probably thought of it, is that I love what modern art says. We are not artists in modern art. We are the people who sell art. And it reinforces kind of how anything can be made a commodity and how sort of dirty that is. All great art should be in museums, I guess. But what makes it great art? Is it the value that is a pin to it by money? I don't know. CD Hunter says, yes, 100% re-Bonfire and Hateful Eight. Yeah, I hated Hateful Eight. I really hated it. Forum Trajanum is fine. I liked this. This got a lot of shit in the sort of the Discusso sphere, but I actually like it. I like it more than Carpe Diem, and I thought it was good, and I've got it, and I might play it actually soon. Again, I enjoyed Forum Trajanum. I thought it was okay. I mean, it's not great. Castles of Tuscany. I'm sorry. I'm putting it C tier. I did not like Castles of Tuscany. I like simple games, but I feel that Castles of Tuscany took all the teeth out of its big brother, and I did not enjoy it at all. I thought it was not good. And I think the community has borne it out with me. And finally, unfortunately, I have to use the cover of the new version. I don't like the new version on principle. Castles of Burgundy, I said in one of my top 100 lists that it, Stefan Feld, if he never designed another game, he has left Castles of Burgundy as a testament to his brilliance. It is just so good. It is, I think, Trajan and Castles of Burgundy, and maybe there are others. I haven't played some of his earlier games like Notre Dame or Bora Bora or the one about the plague or something, or is that Notre Dame? Anyway, or In the Year of the Dragon. I haven't played these games. But Castles of Burgundy is the absolute, and when we're talking about when Ben Davey said, are some designers making them more than just mechanics? And this is the game that proves to you that the art in games lies in the mechanisms. It is absolutely glorious. It is a fantastic game. When you play it, you realize what people are talking about. This is Stefan Feld's best. Stefan Feld, I realize I've not played that many. So if you see, David Moses' Aquasphere is at least 80. I haven't played it, to my shame. I would love to try it. So if you see me at a convention, pull me aside and we'll play a Stefan Feld game together, one I haven't played. So I'd just like to say, if you want to join the Discord, yeah, I've not played it, and it's another city one now, Bora Bora. But if you want to join the Discord, 5gfd.com, go to the pin posts. You can join the Discord. Sorry, burping then. If you really like what I do and you want to help support it and help support me, you can go to patreon.com/5gfd. If you pledge at €5 a month or above, you get all the battle reports. You get the new movie show, which I don't know if CD Hunter is still here, but maybe you could tell the people watching what the movie show is like. I think it's pretty good. The last one was The Seventh Seal, and me and my podcast partner, Stevie J. Sarek, were pretty much confused as hell by the movie. And you also get special blogs from conventions and so on and so forth. Yeah, I think it's worth it. And I think it's worth it simply because I think 5G4D does some pretty good work. If Monday we released the interview with Besimiu Yannick, who is the CEO of Ion Game Design, a super interesting interview, deals with her life as a CEO, but also her life as an immigrant, also the rise of the far right in Sweden, and the notion of censorship within the gaming industry. I think it's a good episode. And yeah, so thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed yourself, and I will see you same time, same station next week. Keep it real, sis.